Hello, welcome to Axiom Curb Flux News on the 25th of April 2015. I'm PJ, I've got Blackhole Bridger on the panel with me, and tonight's episode's going to be covering the week's events. We're going to be pulling out a few articles showing certain things that have been happening this week, and also we've got an interview with Ian R. Crane. He's going to be talking about the apathy kills and the fracking nightmare and the humanity versus insanity and many other things. So do stay tuned for the second part of Flux News, which is the Ian R. Crane interview. But before we get to that, I'm going to play a little introduction to the interview, and then I'm going to hand it over to Blackhole Bridger as he goes through this week's events with us and shows us what's been happening. So I'm going to start with the introduction to the video right about now.
Okay, this is PJ for Axiom Curb. I'm outside the No Hotel in Sheffield. I'm attending the event held by Ian R. Crane, which is the Apathy Kills. I'm hoping to get a short interview afterwards, so do stay tuned for that.
Okay, so that's the intro video for the interview. I'm going to move over now to Blackhole and see what he's got for us. Hello, Blackhole, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Good evening, PJ, and good evening, viewers. Is that what nearly was not? Would mainstream media like it to be swept under that lumpy, bumpy carpet? So I'm going to run through on a daily basis, but I'm going to jump straight on to Wednesday night. Actually Thursday night, early hours Thursday morning, and it was the Max KEISER, and he's going to give us a few words of what the mainstream media is not doing, what the alternative media is doing. So here we go.
Because of other alternative media voices disseminating facts. The war on Syria was voted down, not because of mainstream media, of course, for they had indeed championed an invasion. No, it was because of alternative media, bloggers and others who questioned the war. Next up in the campaign of taking down are TTIP and TPP and fracking. The more the population knows about these toxic trade deals and absurd energy practices, the lower. Yes, over and over again. It is what the mainstream bootlicking media calls fringe groups and fanatics, conspiracy theorists, and crackpots who have provided what the corporate-owned, government-run mainstream media have failed to report. Thomas Jefferson would be proud.
And I'm certainly proud for that. So first of all, we're going to start off with last Saturday's news, which was a TTIP gathering, and it was democracy versus TTIP. This is a Global Justice Now article, and VP, Kentucky Fried Chicken and Virgin targeted in London protest. Over 200 people, including Vivienne Westwood, took part in a protest against the controversial EU-USA free trade deal TTIP, which is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, in central London last Saturday. On Shepherd's Bush Common, protesters heard short speeches from speakers including Vivienne Westwood and Jean Lambert, MEP, that's a member of the European Parliament, before going onto stage creative inventions at nearby Kentucky Fried Chicken, a BP petrol station, and a Virgin shop in the nearby Westfield Shopping Centre. The protest was one of over 600 protests that were taking place across the world as a part of Global Trade Day. targeting a rash of controversial free trade agreements that are being pushed across the world that would massively increase corporate power at the expense of democratic process. In the UK, protests or events also took place in Brighton, Bristol, Liverpool, Birmingham, Manchester and Edinburgh. At the Kentucky Fried Chicken, a line of protesters took turns to wash rubber chickens in buckets of a liquid representing chlorine. Chicken processors are lobbying for TTIP, which is TTIP, which is the Transatlantic Trade Investments Partnership, for the right to sell chlorine-washed chickens in the EU, as is currently allowed in the USA. At the BP petrol station, protesters staged a symbolic die-in across the forecourt. Critics have argued that the TTIP will massively ramp up fossil fuel imports from the USA and result in billions being spent on new fossil fuel infrastructure, with disastrous consequences for the climate. At the Virgin store in the Westfield shopping centre, an auctioneer sold off various parts of the NHS, that's a National Health Service to anybody outside of the UK, beside the protester in a Richard Branson's mask. The protesters were highlighting that Virgin would stand to massively benefit from the privatisation of healthcare services through Branson's Virgin Care Company. Guy Taylor, the trade campaigner for global justice, now said, "Election time is in my mouth for what a huge threat TTIP would be to our parliamentary democracy. Politicians promise so much to ordinary people in the UK, but what would be able to do would be dramatically limited if TTIP was implemented and the corporate interests are brought to bear on so many decisions of government. We need to ensure that our democratically elected officials are free to act in the interests of the people they serve, rather than in the interests of corporate profits." Vivienne Westwood, the iconic fashion designer who spoke at the protest, said, "The politicians who refuse to stand up to TTIP are criminals. Everyone has a duty to inform themselves and others what the terrible consequences of this trade deal would be." The protest was organised by Global Justice Now, War on Want, Keep Our NHS Public, that's the National Health Service to all outside the UK, Brick Lane Debates and Students Against TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, and supported by No TTIP. There's a photo of Vivienne Westwood, addressed the crowd, sleeves rolled up. And there she is, Vivienne Westwood. So we're going to go on to a little YouTube of the demonstrations that took place. Let's see whether we're successful on this. Right, let's roll it. No TTIP.
In countries across Europe, for us saying no, we don't want anything to do with these ghastly deals. Despite them telling us day after day that our NHS is somehow safe from TTIP, we know for a fact that TTIP is absolutely going to apply to health services, to medical services, to education services, to water, to rail, to post, to financial services, to housing. In fact, anything that you thought would be better off back in public hands, they've got other plans for it.
The Trade Commissioner, Cecilia Malmström, tries to reassure us, even yesterday in a blog, that the NHS is safe. And she said, specifically with regard to this international direction, TTIP will not force governments to open public services to any new competition from private providers. It won't force the government to privatise any public service, and it won't limit government's freedoms to change its mind about public services in the future. Now that's all very well, and it may, strictly speaking, even be true. But our Health and Social Care Act 2012 has almost certainly ensured that our NHS is no longer even defined as a public service. So this means it would probably be impossible to keep the NHS out of TTIP.
It's quite clear what's going on, and what it's fundamentally about actually is democracy. Because if you haven't got democracy, then you're not going to do anything about anything else that you're concerned about, GM or anything else, because they're just not going to pay any attention at all.
In terms of lobbying, there is a hell of a lot of lobbying going on here. And it's going on not just at the level of the European Parliament, the European Commission, it's also going on at the level of member states. And some of the biggest lobbying is coming from the agriculture section and the food section, both sides of the Atlantic working together. And that's also what's happening on some of the other issues, such as pesticides. In terms of the democratic the deficit on this, it's enormous. People have quite rightly talked about the investor-state dispute settlement. You know, where if companies don't get what they want, if they think governments have changed policy to their detriment, they can take this to a private tribunal. We have been told by the British government that, yes, we know that the US and the EU have got strong legal systems, but some of the US states at state level, not federal, can be a bit problematic. I.e., they want to do things like promoting local food, local people. This is seen as problematic. This is why ISDS is in there.
I want my government to think about me, to think about you, to think about our family when they're deciding whether to raise the minimum wage and whether to bring more people out of poverty. I want my government thinking about us and thinking about when they're thinking about plain packaging, when they're thinking about trying to stop people dying from cancer. I don't want them worrying about getting sued by a big corporation. They need to have us at their heart.
The thing is that the enemy has shown their hand now, and it is so extreme. And I think the first thing we've got to do is they've drawn the battle line. We don't have a war. We have to fight the politicians. And we have to fight the press as well, because they paint the wrong picture. Of course, we know that, but we've got those two things to do. And so where do we start? And I think we start by calling the crime a crime.
Everyone has a situation on the TTIP. Someone's worried about the environment, someone's worried about health, other people are worried about the attack on democracy. The key issue for us, I think, and our group thinks too, is to make TTIP electorally toxic. Make it toxic, make every single politician realize that a vote for TTIP is something that is going to lose them votes in this election. Write to them, speak to them, meet them, harass them if you have to, but make it electorally toxic. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Absolutely.
Yeah, interested in that.
Yeah, and TTIP, along with TPP, TTIP being the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, and the TPP being the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And they are both just like the EU, but on steroids. and they are the twin sisters of the corporations, which is a dictatorship basically, and together they are the terrible twins that will strip the world's countries of their sovereignty and meld the world into one big ugly sister, a one world corporation, trading bloc under corporation fascism and a one world dictatorship. And this is what the one world order is. Yeah. So
many countries have put bans to things like GMOs and many other things, and it'd be a shame to allow TTIP to take all that good work away.
Well, what they will do, if their politicians sign up to the TTIP and the TPP club, it means we have to abide by their rules. And if the people don't want certain things in our country, and the corporations don't get their way, as one of the speakers was saying, they can take it to a tribunal, and the tribunal is a private tribunal, and the people on the private tribunal, guess who they are? They're the corporations. So we stand not an earthly chance of winning. So they're going to they're totally going to destroy every semblance of democracy that we have got left, even after the EU have been at us.
Yeah, and the people will be left to pay the price.
Yeah, exactly, because the fines that will come through these tribunals and courts, because of the losses that the corporations are going to say they're going to lose because we're stopping them from going ahead with their businesses, of course it comes down to the taxpayers yet again.
Yeah, the government want the people to pay for their own court costs, but when it comes to, like, the corporations taking the government and the country to a court to sue them, yet again it's back down to the people to pay it. It's bloody ridiculous.
Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, my next article is from 21st Century Wire, and the title of their article is Smokescreen, Does New FBI 9/11 Saudi Report Deflect from Clandestine Realities? As the crisis in Yemen continues to unfold, a controversial report detailing Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11 comes forward. Is this latest disclosure just another propaganda plea meant to deflect from other perpetrators involved in planning and executing the attacks on September 11 of 2001, while creating confusion around real US proxy partnerships in the Middle East? Nothing happens by accident in US politics, and this latest release is no exception. There's Jane Stanley reporting at the World Trade Centers on 9/11, and she is actually reporting that the Solomon Building, World Trade Center number 7, has collapsed. And lo and behold, there she is wearing it as a left earmuff. There you go. And she's reporting that it's collapsed. So therefore, it tells you she's reading from a script. So how did they know that it was going to collapse? How did they have the foresight and knowledge to know that the World Trade Center Solomon Building has collapsed when it weren't? But it did do 20 minutes after she made this report. Anyway, we'll follow the article through. BBC deception is already common knowledge that certain authorities had advanced knowledge of 9/11. Saudi Arabia's alleged involvement in the 9/11 attacks, red herring, propaganda ploy. The 9/11 narrative in the mainstream media has taken on a new slant. The FBI is now accused of whitewashing Saudi involvement in the 9/11 attacks. The alleged Saudi involvement in supporting Osama bin Laden, not to mention the classified 28 pages of the 9/11 joint congressional inquiry pertaining to the insidious role of Saudi Arabia in the hijackers, is part of a propaganda ploy. When the report of joint congressional inquiry into 9/11 was released in December 2002, it was met with considerable scepticism. That scepticism grew for a period of time, but then was reduced to speculation about what was contained in the 28 pages that had been redacted by the Bush White House. And for people that don't know what redacted means, it means when text has been blackened out with a marker so the text can't be read. Various US government leaders have since suggested that the missing 28 pages point to Saudi Arabia's complicity in the 9/11 crimes. However, such musings failed to discuss other important issues, like the links between the Saudi regime and the Western deep state, or the fact that from the start, even the Saudis were calling for the 28 pages to be released. Discussion of the missing 28 pages also omits mention of the highly suspicious nature of the inquiry's investigation and its leaders, Kevin Ryan, the 9/11 Joint Congressional Inquiry and the 28 missing pages. Global Research, March the 14th of 2014. The report of the FBI 9/11 Review Commission on the 25th of March 2015 has revealed circumstances which allegedly were withheld by the FBI from both the 9/11 Commission, headed by former Jersey Governor Thomas Keane, as well from the Joint Senate House Inquiry Committee, chaired by the Senator Bob Graham. And that's a national press release. The FBI released its final report on the 9/11 Review Commission. And that's it for the article. But, oh no, so sorry. I must apologise there. It does go on. And now agencies of the US government, including the FBI, are being accused of protecting the Saudis. This alleged Saudi involvement in the 9/11 attacks has served to precipitate segments of the 9/11 truth movement into erroneous and contradictory discourse on the part of the US government and its intelligence apparatus. The objective is to ultimately to build a narrative which will weaken the 9/11 truth movement. The purpose of this new propaganda ploy is ultimately to sustain the legend that Osama bin Laden was behind the attacks and the Saudi Arabian relentlessly supported Al-Qaeda. Namely, the Saudi Arabia acted as the state sponsor of terrorism. In this regard, the media reports intimate that if the Saudi connection is confirmed by the 28 classified pages, this would make 9/11 not just an act of terrorism, but an act of war by a foreign government. There is, however, an obvious hiccup in this reasoning. If the Saudis were indeed the state sponsors of 9/11, why on earth did the US and the Atlantic Alliance, under the doctrine of collective security, choose to wage a just war of retribution against Afghanistan? Did they get their countries mixed up? Now, I'm going to show you a YouTube clip of somebody reporting on the 9/11 of the World Trade Center 7 building. The Sutton was known as the Salomon building. And it's only 3 minutes long. So it's an enhanced version, and the enhanced version is just basically the arrow been put in to show you which is the Salomon building. This video was censored by Google Video. World Trade Center 7 collapsed at 5:20 p.m. This report was 20 minutes earlier. How did the BBC know that it was going to collapse? And why did they report the collapse when it is clearly standing in the background?
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York, behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
That's what you would hope, because this whole downtown area behind me has been completely sealed off and evacuated, apart from the emergency workers. That was done by the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, much earlier today, because of course, the dreadful collapse of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. But New York, very much a city still in chaos. The phones are not working properly, the subway lines are not working properly. And we know that down there near the World Trade Center, there are 3 schools that are being turned into triage centers for emergency treatment. And I know that over in New York Harbor, where the famous Statue of Liberty is.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley in Manhattan. Perhaps we can rejoin her and follow that up later.
This video was censored by Google Video. The World Trade 7 collapsed at 5:20 p.m. This report was 20 minutes earlier. How did the BBC know that it was going to collapse? And why did they report the collapse when it is clearly standing in the background? It just beggars belief, and oh, suddenly they lose contact. Is that maybe because they realise the mistake that they've just been involved in, that they've reported it far too early? There's a grand possibility of that, is there not, PJ?
Well, you never know when you're live. Anything can happen, Paul.
Yeah. Those that commit untruths will get caught out, because the truth always rises to the surface. No matter how long it takes, it still rises to the surface. It's like trying to hold a ball underwater. Sooner or later, you have to let go and that ball will come to the surface. And the same as with truth, it will come to the surface. Anyway, my next article will be going to the UK column, and is an update on Melanie Shaw. Now, this is day 3 of my reports, and this is Monday the 20th of April. This is Melanie Shaw, who sacked her solicitors, and she is now being represented by them against her will. Let's listen to what the lads at the UK column have to say about this.
We need to mention Melanie Shaw because we didn't mention her last week. And well, here's the latest information. Basically, she is in a court hearing in Nottingham, but in fact, it's unlikely she will appear at that court hearing on the 8th of May because this is a mentions hearing, and Melanie's lay legal advisor is basically saying that she's not sure what it's been called by VHS Fletchers, which is the law firm that which Melanie sacked in September last year, but somehow still seems to be collecting the legal aid for Melanie and is still claiming that they represent Melanie. But let's say that again. Melanie sacked them in September last year, and yet continuing to act.
Well, they're desperate about that. I mean, at the moment as well, from talking to her Mackenzie friend, the judge has tried to order that Melanie signs documentation to allow these to staff when she's already sacked, and like we said, she has sacked them. And the reason they want the document signed is so they can be paid. And unfortunately, Melanie probably isn't listening to this broadcast, but if she was, my advice to her would be, don't sign it. You know, and she's good, and she knows that she doesn't need to sign it. But there've been incidents inside the prison, and we all discussed it the other day, where a solicitor who isn't actually went into the cell, and the prison guards, I don't know what else to call them really, I can't call them officers because they're not officers, prison guards, basically pinned her down whilst this would-be solicitor stole files that belonged to her, so there's been theft as well.
Yeah, so let's just reinforce this again. These were not legal files belonging to the law firm or legally being used in the court case. These were her personal files, which clearly must have contained some information that somebody wanted to get hold of, and they were forcibly removed from her. But so that mentions hearing, as Melanie's legal advisor says, she's not sure what they want to mention, and of course she is being completely kept out of this entire proceeding. And then on the 18th of May, there's a plea case management hearing, and there are 2 charges already dropped. This is the latest reason for being in the Sodexo prison at the moment. And the remaining charges are false imprisonment of a paramedic in her home and 2 charges of alleged malicious communications. Now, since the 16th of February, Melanie's lay legal advisor hasn't received a single response to 7 letters sent to Melanie marked Rule 39 legal privilege, which technically no one should be opening but her. And then on the 5th of April, which is Easter Sunday, from the exercise yard at the Sodexo prison, a female was heard to shout that on exercise and was under segregation and in solitary confinement and had been for about 3.5 weeks already. And of course that would mean 23-hour lockdown. So no post, no TV, no exercise, and nobody really knows why she's in solitary confinement. Nobody knows why she's incommunicado, and again, brutal treatment of a vulnerable whistleblower, which, let's keep in mind, in the Tory party manifesto, they claim to protect people they will protect people like Melanie, but maybe that only happens after the general election or something.
I don't know, I mean, excuse me, saying that nobody knows, well, we know actually. We know why she's in segregation. She's in segregation because she's a whistleblower, because she's trying to oust paedophiles, and this was another reason, and one of our views clarified that I think they're going to send to us over the next few days in regards to the marches that happen up and down the country against paedophiles, and why these MPs and why these lords and police haven't been brought to justice. So that'll be quite interesting footage to see.
Indeed. Now, he, of course, Chris Leslie, and his attitude, again, is Melanie who? So he has been asked if he's going to mention Melanie or speak about Melanie at all over the next couple of weeks. And of course, these are important couple of weeks. I'm not sure why, because it's not much in the press about it. But anyway, during the election campaign, he clearly does not want this issue discussed. So if there's anybody in Chris Leslie's constituency, can I ask that perhaps you might like to contact him? Maybe a couple of thousand letters at this point would be the appropriate thing, and make it clear that if he isn't prepared to engage in these areas, then perhaps MP.
I think so. I think he should be. I mean, this is part of naming and shaming, I suppose. Chris, if you're watching, Chris Leslie, I think you should man up, and you should come on the show and explain yourself why you are not protecting somebody that's within your area. You should be protecting them as their local member of parliament. Well, you're not a member of parliament at the moment, and I hope you don't get voted in. But if you do man up and you stand up for what is right, then come in and come on the show, and we'll do an interview with you about Melanie's case and show you actual evidence of abuse. And if we can, and we'll speak to the Mackenzie friend, if she can come in as well, she'll be very happy to debate this with you and to discuss it. It should be very informative.
Indeed. Can't see it, but the offer's there anyway. Okay, moving on.
And to add to those list of no's, there is now no visitation rights to her lay legal advisor, which means Melanie is unable to prepare for her court cases because her legal advisor cannot visit her. And if you can't visit her, the only other form of communication apart from telephone, which is really difficult also, is by communication by letters. And as you've just heard, she's getting no replies.
Yeah.
She's getting no replies to the letters. So how is she supposed to prepare legally for her court cases?
Well, you would have thought, Paul, that, you know, media like BBC had ought to be covering this. But yeah, I don't seem to see much. So I did try and contact him, and all I seem to have got back were this. So I don't know. You probably can't see that on the screen, Paul, but that's basically what I got from BBC. But anyway, back over to you. I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, I mean, this is a terrible case of a kipper stitch up here, I believe, and people should be getting behind this young lady. They should be doing everything they do. They should be shouting from the rooftops, because this young lady, what she's doing is she's shouting out to protect possibly your children or your grandchildren, and she's being treated absolutely abysmally. Anyway, we'll leave that one there for now, and we now go on to day 4, which is Tuesday the 21st of April, and this article to do with fracking, which PJ will cover in this interview with Ian Crane. He's also going to cover a bit on TTIP, which I forgot to mention earlier. But anyway, this is Dutchanese. And, oh yeah, that's what I meant to say, PJ. Why aren't the BBC doing something? Now, this was why I played Max KEISER at the beginning, because Max KEISER is saying it's the alternative news community that seem to be putting the work in and doing the proper reporting and letting the people know what the people need to know. Anyway, we'll go back to this fracking article. This was the 21st of the 4th. Texas earthquakes linked to fracking by professionals. Texas officials still in denial. Professional studies on several recent earthquakes in Texas have now proved fracking to be the root cause of the seismic unrest. It looks like the Texas Railroad Commission is going to do some studying. The TRC, the Texas Railroad Commission, actually recently denied that fracking causes earthquakes. As we all know, it's never too late to learn something new. This is April the 2nd of 2012. Earthquake strikes Dallas, Texas. A 4-meter earthquake struck a New Madrid. The Dallas earthquake occurring very close to a nearby fracking operation. The Texas Railroad Commission denied a fracking connection. April the 3rd of 2015, West Texas fracking earthquake, and that's a 3.4 magnitude. Linked to the actual Southern Methodist University study. You can go through on the link if you want to pull this up. You can do. Most likely caused a 2030 combustion of gas feed, fluid injection removal. There is a link there. If you want to play back after and freeze it and pick up the link, you'll get a much more in-depth to be able to read for yourself. The Self-Methodist Union-led seismology team finds that high volumes of wastewater injection combined with saltwater brine extraction from natural gas wells is the most likely cause of earthquakes occurring near Axiom, Texas, from late 2013 through spring of 2014. In an area where the seismology team identified two intersecting faults, they developed a sophisticated 3D model to assess the change in fluid pressure within the rock formation. They used the model to estimate stress changes induced in the area by two wastewater injection wells and the more than 70 production wells that remove both natural gas and significant volumes of salty water known as brine. Conclusions from the modelling study integrate a broad range of estimates for uncertain subsurface conditions. Ultimately, better information on fluid volumes, flow parameters, and subsurface pressures in the region will provide more accurate estimates of the fluid pressure along this fault. The model shows that a pressure differential develops along one of the faults as a combined result of high fluid injection rates to the west and high water removal rates to the east. Said Matthew Hornbach of the Southern Methodist University, Associate Professor of Geophysics. When we ran the model over a 10-year period through a wide range of parameters, it predicted pressure changes significant enough to trigger earthquakes on faults that are already stressed. Model predicated stress changes on the fault were typical tens to thousands of times larger than stress changes associated with water level fluctuation caused by the recent Texas drought. What we refer to as induced seismicity, earthquakes caused by something other than strictly natural forces, is often associated with subsurface pressure changes, said Heather Dishon of the Methodist University Associate, Professor of Geophysics. We can rule out stress changes induced by local water table changes. While some uncertainties remain, it is unlikely that natural increases to tectonic stresses led to these events. Surprisingly, small changes in stress can reactivate certain faults. Sean explained that some ancient faults in the region are more susceptible to movement, near critically stressed, due to their orientation and direction. In other words, surprisingly, small changes in stress can reactivate certain faults in the region and cause earthquakes, Dishon said. The study, Causal Factors and Seismicity near Axiom, Texas, has been published in the journal Nature Communications. The study was produced by a team of scientists from the Self-Methodist University's Roy M. Huffington Department of Earth Sciences, in Dedman College of Humanities and Sciences. The U.S. Geological Survey, the University of Texas Institute for Geophysics, and the University of Texas Department of Petroleum and Geosystems Engineering, the Self-Methodist University scientists Hornbach and Dishon are the lead authors. Fluid pressure modeling of industry activity and water table fluctuations is first of its kind. The Self-Methodist University seismologists have been studying earthquakes in North Texas since 2008, when the first series of felt tremors hit near DFW International Airport between October the 30th, 2008 and May the 16th of 2009. Next came a series of quakes in Cleburne between June 2009 and June 2010. And this third series of the Axiom-Reno area northwest of Fort Worth occurred between November 2013 and January 2014. The Self-Methodist University team also is studying an ongoing series of earthquakes in the Irving Dallas area that began in April 2014. In both the DFW sequence and the Cleburne sequence, the operation of injection wells used in the disposal of natural gas production fluids was listed as a possible cause of the seismicity. The introduction of fluid pressure modelling of both industry activity and water table fluctuations in the Axiom study represents the first of its kind, and has allowed the Self-Methodist University team to move beyond assessments of possible causes to the most likely cause identified in this report. Prior to the DFW airport earthquakes in 2008, an earthquake large enough to be felt had not been reported in the Fort Worth Basin since 1950. The North Texas earthquakes of the last 7 years have all occurred in the areas developed for natural gas extraction from a geological formation known as the Barnett Shale. The Texas Railroad Commission reports that production in the Barnett Shale grew exponentially from 216 million cubic feet a day in the year 2000 to 4.4 billion cubic feet a day in 2008, to a peak of 5.74 billion cubic feet of gas a day in 2012. The Methodist University SL study adds to the growing body of evidence connecting some injection wells and, to a lesser extent, some oil and gas production to induce earthquakes. The Self-Methodist University's team notes that there are many thousands of injection and or public or production wells beg my pardon, they are not associated with earthquakes. The area of study addressed in the report is in the network is in the Newark East Gas Field, the NEGF. North of the east of the cell is this field. Hydraulic fracturing is applied to loosen and extract gas trapped in the Barnett Shale. A sedimentary rock formation formed approximately 350 million years ago. The report explains that along with natural gas production wells in the Azul area of the Newark East gas field can also bring to the surface significant volumes of water from the highly permeable Ellenberger Formation, both naturally occurring brine as well as fluids that were introduced during the fracking process. Subsurface fluid pressures are known to play a key role in causing seismicity. A primer produced by the US Department of Energy explains the interplay of fluids and faults. The fluid pressure in the pores and the fractures of the rocks is called the pore pressure. The pore pressure acts against the weight of the rock, and the forces holding the rock together, stresses due to tectonic forces. If the pore pressures are low, especially compared to the forces holding the rock together, then only the imbalance of natural in situ earth stresses will cause the occasional earthquake. If, however, pore pressures increase, then it would take less of an imbalance of in situ stresses to cause an earthquake, thus accelerating earthquake activity. This type of failure is called shear failure. Injecting fluids into the subsurface is one way of increasing the pore pressure and causing faults and fractures to fail more easily, thus inducing an earthquake, he said. Thus, induced seismicity can be caused by injecting fluid into the subsurface or by extracting fluid at the rate that causes subsidence and or slippage along planes of weaknesses in the earth. All seismic waveform data used in the compilation of the report are publicly available at the IRIS Data Management Center. Wastewater injection, brine production and surface injection pressures data are publicly available in the Texas Railroad Commission, the TRC. Craig Pearson at the TRC, Bob Patterson from the Upper Trinity Groundwater Conservation District, scientists at XTO Energy, ExxonMobil, Morningstar Partners, and EarnVast provided valuable discussions and, in some instances, data used in the completion of the report. This report points to the need for even more study in connection with earthquakes in North Texas. In connection with earthquakes in North Texas, said Brian Stump of the Southern Methodist University's Albritton Chair in Earth Sciences. Industry is an important source of key data, and the scope of the research needed to understand these earthquakes requires government support of multiple levels, Study links swarm of quakes in Texas to natural gas drilling. You can find more information on this, so if you play back after, if you want to get that and pull that up, you are welcome to. With real-time monitors, scientists have linked a swarm of small earthquakes west of Fort Worth, Texas, to nearby natural gas wells and wastewater injection. In 84 days, from November 2013 to January of 2014, the area around Azle, Texas, shook with 27 magnitude 2 or greater earthquakes, while scientists at Southern Methodist University and the US Geological Survey monitored the shaking. It's an area that had no recorded quakes for 150 years on faults that have been inactive for hundreds of millions of years, said the Southern Methodist University geophysicist Matthew Hornbach. When the volume of injections decreased significantly, so did the shaking. The scientists concluded that removing salt water from the wells in the gas production process and then injecting that wastewater back underground represent the most likely cause for the swarm of quakes, according to a study published Tuesday in the journal Nature Communications. The scientists determined based on where and when the earthquakes happened. Computer models that track pressure changes and company data from nearby wells, Hornbach said the timing and location of the quakes correlates better to the drilling and injection than any other possible reason. There appears to be little doubt about the conclusion that the earthquakes were in fact induced by the United States Geological Service seismologist Susan Hull, who wasn't part of the study team, said in an email, "There's almost an abundance of smoking guns in this case." This has some studies that linked injecting wastewater from energy wells to a tremendous jump in earthquakes in Oklahoma and southern Kansas, where there have been more than 950 magnitude 2 or higher quakes so far this year, according to United States Geological Survey. In the past, studies have linked quakes to the injection of wastewater after the drilling process. This study is different because it also sees a secondary link in another part of the drilling process, where massive amounts of brine is taken out of the ground with the gas, said study co-author William Ellisworth of the United States Geological Survey. Removing the salt water changes the underground pressure, Hornbach said, but the deep injection of the wastewaters still is the principal culprit, Ellsworth said. The controversial method of hydraulic fracturing or fracking, even though that they may be used in the drilling, is not physically causing the shakes, he said. Well, that was that article about that, and this guy Dutchinese, he seems to be on the mark on numerous over the last couple of years. I've been looking at his work, and he's been spot on every time. So why the Railroad Commission aren't paying any heed to him? I'm sure I would cock my ear to somebody that's right all the time if my own people seem to be wrong. Well, would not you, PJ?
Well, it depends if you've got, a left earmuff.
A left earmuff like Jane Stanley.
Yeah, that's the one.
Right, my next article is the day 4, and it's the it's day 5, and it's Wednesday, 22nd of April, and it's to do with the Falklands. Here we go, and then we all go around. This is Mirko Press of the South Atlantic News Agency. It's the article was put out on the 25th of April. So it was put out on the 22nd of April, but updated on the 25th. Right. Argentina sues Falklands oil and support companies involved in hydrocarbons drilling. Here we go again. Drilling seems to be causing so much trouble. The Argentine government on Tuesday sued several energy and support companies that are drilling for oil, near the Falkland Islands. Well, is it not strange how we've not heard the mainstream media talk on this, especially the UK mainstream media? Is it because our government seems to know we can't protect the Argentinian Falkland Islands? Oh, sorry, the British Falkland Islands. Because our forces are so diminished now by the constant cuts over the years. Back in the 80s.
The constant cuts of Cameron.
Constant cuts of Cameron, yes. I mean, back in the 80s when the Falklands crisis was on, we had the forces to be able to protect the Falklands. And I've got a funny feeling that the Argentinians know we haven't got that capability now. Is that why our government is being quiet on the issue? We haven't heard much. I wonder. Anyway, I will continue. The latest chapter of a long-standing dispute over the South Atlantic archipelago through analysis of little practical effect. The criminal case was filed in Rio Grande, Tierra del Fuego province, which according to the Argentine constitution includes the Falklands and Antarctica. Argentina is suing British companies, Rockhopper, Exploration, Premier Oil and Falkland Oil and Gas, along with American company Noble Energy and Edison International, Spa from Italy. It's also suing several others that have collaborated and provided logistical support to the larger companies. Petroleum Geoservices, Desire Petroleum, Neptune EHF, White Ocean Rig. Argentina will defend its natural resources, says Vilnius, arguing that the companies are performing illegal acts by drilling near the islands, which the Argentine government claims. Argentina will defend its natural resources, yeah. And he's saying this, and I think they mean what they say because they know that we can't defend it.
Yeah, but it's not much of a problem for NATO, though, is it?
Yeah, is that not surprising? Is that not weird, really? I mean, NATO, Northern Atlantic Treaty Organisation, this is South Atlantic. Oh, or does it not matter to the bully boys, NATO? Well,
this will be interesting to keep his eye on this, just to pretty much...
Yeah, I mean, this really punched me in the face when I saw this. I thought, wow, here we go again. That merry old go-round, but this time we haven't got the horses to sit on. Anyway, when Argentine officials announced their plans last week in London, UK Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond sharply criticised the move. Oh dear. It's an outrageous piece of bullying and threatening against the Falkland Islanders. Perfect right to develop their economic resources. Yeah, he is. He's mouthing off again, isn't he? Oh, blimey. The Argentinians need to stop this kind of behaviour and start acting like a responsible member of the international community. Do I smell a hypocrite in the air? Do I smell a hypocrite? We're supposed to act responsible like we did over Syria, Libya, Iraq. Was we acting responsible? Was we all acting responsible? And it's funny, when it amazes me. When other people do it, they're not acting responsible. When our government's doing it, it's because we have the right, or we think we have the right, to stick our noses in. The suits say that exploration for hydrocarbons was being done without permission of the Argentine Secretary of Energy. If found guilty, the heads of the companies and other employees could be sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. Even if the suits are successful, it's unlikely that any decision will go beyond the borders of Argentina. Negre, an Argentine lawyer specializing in commercial international law, said the government would have serious difficulties carrying out any sentence because it was unlikely international bodies would implement it. In that sense, the suits represent more of a political gesture in the midst of escalating political rhetoric than an action with concrete effects, said political analyst Rosendo Fraga. The Falklands dispute always strikes a nerve in Argentina, but Britain has repeatedly said the question of sovereignty and future depends on the decision from the islanders based on their right of self-determination. In the 2013 referendum, the vast majority of Falkland Islanders residents voted to remain a British territory. The islands have been population of almost 3,000 people, according to the 2012 census. Several United Nations resolutions have urged the two nations to negotiate. Argentina claims Britain usurped the territory by placing a naval garrison there in 1833. The latest clash began last month when Britain announced plans to update its military capacities protecting the islands over the next decade, arguing Argentina represents a live threat to islanders. The Falklands elected government later announced that the first well of the current drilling campaign, Zebedee, was a oil and gas discovery. Since then, go ahead.
There's been quite a few oil discoveries.
Yeah. And look how many times there's trouble that follows oil discoveries. Yeah. Since then, the Argentine government has repeatedly criticised Britain on defence spending and oil drilling. During April the 3rd speech, while claiming Argentina's right to the Falklands, Maldives, President Cristina Fernandez said Great Britain should not spend even one more British pound protecting the islands and instead should use the money for its poor. I seem to agree with something of that. But that is that article, so I think it needs to be kept on down that end of the world. I mean, it's a long way from home, and people don't seem to keep an eye on these things, global things. They're so insular nowadays. They're so self-absorbed with what's going on just around their immediate area, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, my last article is was on Friday, and it is the New Scientist article, and it's a tech article, and it's tiny robot walls carrying more than 100 times their weight. Yeah, so this was on Friday. I've tried this one already and I had no success, so I did put it up on YouTube, so we go straight to that one and hopefully we have success here. Talking on it, it's just visual, so keep your eyes peeled and watch what's going down here then.
Well, there you go, Paul. That's the answer to how they built the pyramids, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd like to get my cup of tea a bit faster than that, to be quite honest. But anyway, we go back to the article. I just thought I'd show you that first so you get an idea of what's what.
That's going to play again, I think. Paul, that video, you might want to stop that video. It's going to move on to the next one, I think.
Let me... Not now, very much. Back to the text. So I really would like my cup of tea a lot faster than that. Mighty things come in small packages. The little robots in this video can haul things that weigh over 100 times more than themselves. The super strong bots, built by mechanical engineers at the Stanford University in California, will be presented next month at the International Conference on Robotics and Automation in Seattle, Washington. The secret is in the adhesives on the robot's feet. Their design is inspired by geckos, which have climbing skills that are legendary in the animal kingdom. The adhesives are covered in minute rubber spikes that grip firmly onto the wall as the robot climbs. When pressure is applied, the spikes bend, increasing their surface area and thus their stickiness. When the robot picks its foot back up, the spikes straighten out again and detach easily. The bots also move in a style that is borrowed from biology, like the inchworm. One pad scooches the robot forward, while the other stays in place to support the heavy load. This helps the robot avoid falls from missing its step and without using up precious power. The heavy lifting capabilities, all this adds up to the robot with serious power. For example, one 9-gram bot can hoist more than a kilogram as it climbs. In the video, it's carrying Sticky Bot, the Stanford Lab's first ever robot gecko, built in 2006. Another tiny climbing bot weighs just about 20 milligrams, but can carry 500 milligrams, a load about the size of a small paper clip. Engineer Elliot Hawkes built the bot under a microscope using tweezers to put the parts together. The most impressive feat of strength comes from a ground bot nicknamed Tug. Although it weighs just 12 grams, it can drag a weight that's 2,000 times heavier. The same as you pulling around a blue whale, explains David KEISER, who is in the same lab. In future, the team thinks that the machines like these could be useful for hauling heavy things in factories or on construction sites. They could also be useful in emergencies, and they could also be useful for war machines. Yeah. For example, one might carry a rope ladder up to a person trapped on a high floor in a burning building. But for tasks like these, the engineers may have to start attaching their adhesive to robots that are even larger and thus more powerful. If you leave yourself a little more room, you can do some pretty amazing things, says Christensen. Yes, pretty amazing things. They can be used for bad as well as good. And I like the way they always point out the good things and never point out the negative sides to these things, especially with transhumanism galloping its way towards us.
Yeah. I wonder, Blackhole, if these robots could be of any use to getting a few of these corrupt MPs out of Parliament. Maybe not just yet, because they're not actually in Parliament, are they? But if we wait a couple of weeks, we could put that to test.
Well, we need a pretty big bot to drag, I was going to say Cyril Smith, or rather than Eric Pickles. Okay, we need a big box to get him out, won't we?
Well, it depends. If they upgrade them and keep them, you know, maintained, you might get one of them 12 grand ones doing it. Who knows?
Will we make them take common purpose graduate courses as well? Will they have AI? Will they have AI as well? Because I mean, put these capabilities together with artificial intelligence. I mean, crikey, it's frightening. It is frightening. I mean, and what they show you, what they've got here now, well, it's nothing to what they've got in the dark rooms. What they've really got, what they show in public, is a little way behind what they've got in the dark rooms.
I covered an article similar to this many months ago, and it were all on micro nanobots and similar stuff like this, but really macro sort of things, small things.
Yes, I remember that nanobots. Yes.
Yeah, I covered that pretty well. But I just thought we saying there in blue, they could also be useful in emergencies, and that just made me think, you know, these corrupt MPs.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that is definitely one of the biggest emergencies in this country at the moment. Especially if we can use them before they sign into the TTIP.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, it'd be brilliant.
That'd be absolutely brilliant. Oh, crikey! I mean, shall we go to Stanford University, ask them what they've really got to get these lowlife out?
Well, DARPA's done exoskeleton, which is similar stuff to this in carrying weight and things. It's just on a bigger scale. So maybe you might want to wear an exoskeleton when you're going down there, Paul.
You need a bloody big exoskeleton to get round Eric Pickles. I'm sorry, I'm not picking on Eric Pickles. He's the only large MP I can think of at the moment. That's in residence at the moment. I'm on about. Well, they're not in residence. They're at the hustings at the moment, aren't
they? All right, so some good articles there, Blackhole. Enjoy watching them.
Yeah, that concludes me for today. I hope it wasn't too long and drawn out for you. So I will pass the viewers back over to my good friend PJ to go ahead with it. With this interview, which I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see my friend Ian.
Excellent. I'll just working on that now. If you want to close your side down, Paul, now you can do. Just check out to mine. And before I play this, because we are going to be playing out on this video, it's 26 minutes long. Do stick around if you're interested in Ian R. Crane's work and subjects of fracking and many other things, so you'd be interested to have a listen to what Ian's got to say in regards to that. And we will be back tomorrow. We've got Blackhole with me again on the panel. We're going to be interviewing, well, Paul's going to be interviewing Brenda McNamara, also known as Mumsy. And it'll be very interesting to have a listen and a talk to Brenda tomorrow. That's between 6 p.m. So 6 and 7 p.m. So do join us again for that. And for now, I will play out on the interview with Ian R. Crane from yesterday. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Okay, I'm with Ian R. Crane. I've just attended the Apathy Kills event with him, and is the former oil field executive. Yeah, is that right? Mm-hmm. And I'd like if you could answer these. I've got a few questions, a few other points as well. First, I just want to talk about the Apathy Kills that you've just done today. You've got 5 more to do, which is Brighton, Ipswich, Nottingham, Hull, York, and I think it ends in York at 1st of May.
Yeah, next week. So we've got 5 through next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
The events that you've done so far, how do you think they're turning out? As you expected, or?
Absolutely not. I mean, obviously, in some locations, we had really good turnout, like Glasgow and Swansea, Manchester. Elsewhere, it's been relatively small numbers, but that's great because it means that we have more of an intimate event, if you like. Yeah. It's more interactive, but I'm quite relaxed about relatively small numbers because if it was big numbers, then we might be drawing over a bit too much attention. So I'm quite happy that it's small numbers, you know, and as you saw tonight, there's a lot of good discussion, a lot of good debate. And that, I mean, you tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I think a lot of people will go away and talk to other people about what we've been discussing tonight. And in particular, the focus on getting people to seriously consider whether or not by not voting, they're actually making the best choice. Because as you know, a big part of what I'm trying to express in the Apathy Kills events is by not engaging in the process, we are effectively doing exactly what the establishment want. So, you know, I'm asking people to reconsider their decision not to vote and to participate in the process and use their vote wisely.
I've never voted yet, never voted. I have been in the last year open-minded to at least think about voting. I think a lot of people don't vote with the fact that, you know, after you get onto the electoral register, you can have the debt men hunting you down and things like that, and I think that's also an issue.
I do understand. I mean, and if people elect not to join the electoral roll, then it effectively means they can't vote anyway.
Yeah.
So I understand that. But if they are on the electoral roll, then by engaging in the process, they can actually make a difference.
Yeah, which is more important than how much money you're in debt with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and another thing, a lot of people are thinking that they've begun to think that you can't change the system from within. What's your thoughts on that?
There is no panacea. I mean, there's no quick fix. If there was, we'd have found it by now. And we should do whatever it is we need to do. So if we can change the system from within, we should try and do it. But, you know, we shouldn't necessarily just rely on that. So we've got to also be building something outside of the system that can replace the system. But at the same time, if we ignore the opportunity to try and change the system from inside, we'd be missing a trick.
Yeah, exactly. From both ends.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So from the Apathy Kills, you've also done the Voices from the Gas Fields, which is where you went to Australia, you met with Brian Monk and many others. I think you said to me 10 days, you'll be going on YouTube.
Hopefully within the next 10 days, we'll be putting it out on open source. I mean, I've still got 2 weeks, well, sorry, I've still got 2 weeks of editing costs to cover because we crowdfunded for 4 weeks, but the actual project took 6 weeks.
Right.
And I have no other means of support, so I do need to raise that money. But then as soon as that's addressed, then yeah, we'll put it out on open source.
Concerns for over in Australia with the documentary you've done, Voices from the Gas Fields. What importance does that have for UK?
Primarily, the unconventional gas industry is an insidious industry that leaves a trail of destruction wherever it goes in the world. The area of southern Queensland that I visited both in 2012 and more recently in 2014 is basically about the size of the UK. Queensland itself is 7 times the size of the UK. I was focusing my research there, my time in the gas fields in an area about 250 miles or so to the west of Brisbane. And the population density of that area is a fraction of what it is here. And what I've really tried to convey in the documentary is the magnitude of the devastation in Queensland and the impact that it's had on the lives of the people there. When you consider that this country is 100 times more densely populated than Queensland, the impact on communities in this country will be far greater than it is in Queensland.
Which also moves me on to your fracking nightmare. You've done 48 episodes over 2.5 years.
50 now.
Is it 50 now?
50, yeah. 50 episodes of fracking nightmare. No, in a year and a half.
Right, okay. In a year and a half?
Yep. The first one went out in November of 2013.
All right, okay. I must have a bit of research wrong here then. So, are all the contracts now tendered?
There was the 14th round of licensing, which tenders had to be submitted by October 28th of last year. There were 295 licenses up for grabs, which was effectively 46% of the country. We don't know exactly what licenses were bid for, but what we do know is that 95 of the 295 were tendered for.
Right.
So that means that potentially when those bids are adjudicated, we are looking at a situation where another 15% of the country, in addition to the 18% that's already licensed, so that's 33%. So by the end of this year, we could literally be in a situation where 1/3 of this entire country is licensed for the exploitation of unconventional gas.
My next question is, which is, you've actually answered it in the event tonight on Happy for Kills. For anybody else who's going to attend the last 5 you've got, will also pick up on this answer. But the fracking, is it just about test drilling? Is it about actual fracking, or is it about pump and dump?
I think a combination of all three.
Yeah.
Basically, I think the industry is looking to maximise as much as it can. So I think that what they're trying to do, or what they wanted to do, they didn't bank on the oil price tanking down to around $50 a barrel. So in my opinion, as I expressed tonight, this industry is not viable at these kind of pricing levels. And elsewhere in the world, the industry is being put into hibernation. So why is it that the British government is still pushing ahead with this agenda? And why is it that the companies even are considering pushing ahead when there's no possible way they can make a profit when the price is $25 a barrel below what it's going to cost to get out of the ground? So obviously one can argue that they're banking on the price of oil going back up.
Which is probably the Gatwick story.
Which is the Gatwick story, but as I described tonight, that's it was a con to get mud punters to throw money at David Venegas. But I think more concerning is the potential that this industry considers itself a vehicle by which the government can establish the deep geological disposal repositories, which are outlined in the white paper that the government published last July 2014. That white paper is titled Implementing Geological Disposal. And I would encourage people to search for it. You can just search for Deep Geological Disposal White Paper 2014. And it's a 55-page document that outlines the British government's game plan to turn this country into a toxic nuclear waste dump.
Will this have any connection with the Trident if the Trident got shut down?
I don't know directly. I mean, it's certainly something that one has to keep monitoring, but I don't know specifically.
Your humanity based insanity, 38 episodes I've got here. Is that right?
I think that's right.
Okay. As more people are waking up and the powers that be attempt to contain that, do you feel that the population of UK are yet to face even more draconian laws from the beast?
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think we're seeing it in Spain, where we've got the gagging laws, there's a raft of gagging laws that have been implemented. And Spain is a bit the experiment. If it works in Spain, they'll try and roll it out elsewhere. We in the UK and elsewhere in the world, there are more and more people waking up and to the realization of what's occurring, and more people are getting involved, which is why the establishment is accelerating its surveillance and control agenda, which I discussed at some length this evening. So it's a bit of a two-edged sword for them, because the more outrageous they get in terms of shutting down freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of expression, right to peaceful protest, then people go, hang on a second, there's something not right here. So it does backfire on them. So we're in, I think, a very, very interesting period in our evolutionary process. And then, of course, as I've been discussing tonight, how we react over the next 5 years is going to be absolutely seminal.
Apart from Spain, which you just said, France is basically guilt until proven innocent.
This is Napoleonic law. Yes, basically under civil law, which is Napoleonic law, you are effectively guilty of anything you are accused of until you have done whatever it takes to prove yourself innocent. Very different from common law, of course, where you are innocent until you are proven to be guilty. But the British establishment wants to embrace civil law, of course.
And set that through the rest of the EU
at
some point.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind that the southern part of England is onto France. Is it onto France? A certain part of southern England?
Where the European plan is to effectively destroy the nation states and to regionalise the EU, then yes, parts of southern England effectively becomes part of France. I mean, these are the outlandish visions of the globalists who want to destroy the nation state. And if people want to see the prima facie evidence that that is the intention, then just search for Peter Sutherland, who did an interview with the BBC on June 21st, 2012. And in that interview, he stated categorically that the agenda within Europe was to destroy national homogeneity. And the way in which they were going to do that was through immigration. So that's not a statement,
Which is interesting how UKIP's just come about with that being, I think on immigration in its own could be enough for just UKIP. Another question I want to bring to you is the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership. It's the free trade agreement between the EU and US. The question to you is, well, this is from somebody else, but it's to you, is, will it be a corporation takeover and a loss of sovereignty? And if so, what sovereignty will we have left?
No.
None at all?
No. Basically, what is being prepared, it's the US and Europe is TTIP, as you say, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. The other side, US and Asia, is the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. And it's the same thing. Basically, what it is the global corporations effectively establishing a raft of legislation that supersedes all national sovereignty. And the first element of this we've actually seen in Australia in the last 24 hours, where the New South Wales government withdrew Met Gasco's license to be able to drill at a place called Bentley. And it withdrew the license on the grounds that there was 2,000 people there on average, and some days the weekend there was more, protesting against the company starting to drill for coal seam gas, coal bed methane as we call it. And they withdrew the license on the grounds that they clearly hadn't fulfilled their obligation to consult with the local community. Met Gasco took the New South Wales government to court, and the judge has ruled that the government was wrong to prevent them from drilling, and that the government should pay all their court costs. And what we are looking at is a situation where any time the government says, I'm sorry, but we're not going to permit you to do that, the corporations can come in and say, well, we're going to sue you. And in law, they will, in the new law, they will effectively be guaranteed a win.
So is it the TTIP, that's the South American?
That's the US and, well, it's the Pacific.
It's just the Pacific.
So it's the Pacific Rim countries with the US.
Right, okay. And also with the TTIP, we've got 4 candidates here over the past week have done a few comments. We've got Labour candidate Mike Graves. He said it's the biggest prize in global trade. Green Party candidate Hugh Small, he admitted he was not against the TTIP. Lib Dem candidate Anuja Prasha, I think it is, potentially says it has the potential to give too much power to multinational companies.
Absolutely.
And UKIP Robert Stevenson, he said his party would not sign up to TTIP. What's your thoughts on them?
My observation for the Green Party is that they clearly haven't done the research. With UKIP, I mean, obviously to block it is in line with their policy. I mean, I think we've got to get some balance between the political parties here, because UKIP is almost about total isolationism for the UK, and one of the issues perhaps with the Green Party is that they're for all embracing the global agenda. I mean, in Australia just 2 years ago, the Green Party website stated categorically that they were in favour of the one world government. I would argue that obviously in the absolute ideal scenario we would have a one world government, but we're light years away from it. We're absolutely light years away, and it wouldn't be benign. Actually TTIP and the TTP are an attempt to establish global governance by the corporations. And that does not have humanity's best interests at heart. So I would urge MPs or prospective parliamentary candidates to do a bit more research and understand that this would destroy the power of the British government to effectively rule against the corporations.
Would you say it's treason if it go through? It's a tricky one.
It's a tricky one, but I mean, obviously, if we define treason as effectively handing power over to a foreign entity, then treason was committed in 1974 when we signed up to the EC in the first place.
True. That's my thoughts as well. Yeah, I share that with you. One more thing: direct democracy. Is it something you'd entertain, or would you rather tackle it in a different way?
I think the problem that we have is that the establishment likes democracy in its current form because it's the easiest system to manipulate. I think we have not yet developed the form of community government that we need to build upon to actually get this country back on track. I mean, I think we've got to start building from the ground up. The problem that we've got is that the corporations effectively control our politicians. So the politicians either play ball, in other words, they succumb to all the corporate pressures, or they're removed. And that's why they like this form of government, because if they don't get what they want, they can change the whole thing in 5 years. I think we've got to find something that's a little bit more resilient in terms of challenging the corporatist agenda. And right now, I would say I don't have that in terms of a blueprint. But I think what we've got to do is start getting people to engage at community level. And then as people start to build networks across community, I think we're going to see a new paradigm evolve.
Which is what Thatcher's era totally destroyed.
Absolutely.
Beppe Grillo, I think his name is, he's the one in Italy. He set up something similar to direct democracy. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Listen, I mean, Italy's an interesting case, and we've also got direct democracy, of course, in direct democracy party in Ireland. And listen, I mean, when you want to change the existing paradigm, sometimes you've got to take a punt with something. And Italy's got an appalling record post-Second World War. I mean, I don't know how many governments it's up to now, probably 40-something. But I mean, maybe even more, because of their form of the proportional representation.
Active blatant corruption.
And the corruption, exactly. But they never ever get a majority,
no.
A clear majority. So again, it's an easy system to manipulate. So, hey, if something's new, give it a whirl.
Okay.
Let's not knock it until it's actually had a chance.
So, a message to the people for the rest of 2015.
Engage in the process. Our form of government, our form of democracy, absolutely relies on people not participating. And we've got to change that. When people say we can't make a difference, we can. But if you're not prepared to engage, you're not going to make a difference. So, like I said, there's no panacea. Just engaging in their system to bring about change isn't the total answer. We've also got to build something to replace it.
Yeah.
But let's not leave any stone unturned.
Yeah, it's very good. I think that's all my questions I had, really.
Okay.
I could have gone for the rest of the night, but I kept it as brief as I could and to the point for what you're doing with the word, which is excellent, tremendous work. You're out there. I don't know where you get your energy from, as I said to you earlier, but it's just inspiring me watching you running up and down the country, attending different events in different places, and I just can't work out how you get there. It seems to be on YouTube with the videos you put up, and I just can't work it out, but you're doing excellent. Other than that, is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No, thanks for coming along tonight. It's good to hook up with you. We've been communicating through
well over a year now.
Facebook well over a year, and thanks to you that I got the Humanity vs. Insanity and Fracking Nightmare playlists up on YouTube.
Yeah, quite
yeah, no, I appreciate that. And look, it's a team effort. I'm at a particular stage in my life where I have the luxury to be able to be mobile, to chase up and down the country. Obviously, not everybody can do that.
Not especially on trains.
No, especially not on trains. And all we can ask is that people participate in whatever way they can. Some have more time than others. Obviously, people have got to take care of their own family responsibilities. That's got to be a priority. But if you can create a bit of spare time to get involved in some way, shape, or form, you know, the next generation need us to do whatever we can.
So you don't promote or encourage people to do protest and collectivism or anything like that as far as petitions go?
No, I mean, I hate petitions with a vengeance, because I think petitions are disempowering, because people think, oh, that's it, I've clicked on the petition, I've done my bit. No one gives a damn. And it's the same with even a hard copy petition. You sign a petition, say, that's it, I've done my bit. No one cares. You know, go to Downing Street, every 15 minutes you'll see someone come along with a petition, and then they can report back to their community and say, oh, we've handed in a petition to 10 Downing Street. No one cares, no one's going to read it. It's going to be binned as soon as the front door's closed. Same with one-day protests. You know, they're a social safety valve. You know, everybody has a nice time, it's good for networking, but in the scheme of things, nothing changes. You know, that's why, you know, the anti-fracking community has followed the lead that probably was kicked off by Occupy, which is that if you're going to make a difference, be serious about it. You know, let it be known that you ain't going anywhere until that industry or whatever it is you're trying to shut down is shut down and gone.
What about the people who'd love to do this, but they're either vulnerable or they're in some sort of fear?
No, don't step out. You know, obviously we all step out of our comfort zone a little bit, for sure.
Some more than others.
Some more than others. You know, as David Monk says in the Voices from the Gasfields film, you've got to go deep within yourself. Find something within yourself that, you know, gives you that power to be able to confront, you know, whatever it is that you're confronting. It's stepping out of your comfort zone for sure. And it's like all things. The more you do it, the easier it gets. But you know, it's better that people take time to think about how they want to get involved, in what way, shape, or form, and then commit to it.
Yeah, it's an individual thing. It has to be
absolutely
on their
there's no right or wrong here. It's whatever people feel they can do, and if they think of something that he's doing, then go do it. You know, what we've got to stop doing is, and I don't get it anymore because people know how I respond. But a few years ago, I used to get, you know, emails or phone calls saying, "Hey, Ian, have you thought of this, or have you thought of that, or have you done this?" I don't want to hear that. What I want to hear is people say, "Ian, I've done this, or I'm doing this," and you know, and that's great, because that's when you're learning that people are empowering themselves. And I always encourage them. You know, nothing is ever a bad idea. If somebody's thought an idea, I encourage them. Give it a whirl.
Brilliant stuff. Last point I want to make is I mentioned it to you during your event. It's the Criminal Justice and Courts Act, Section 26, and the other bit where they basically made anybody, whether you're guilty or not guilty, pay court costs.
Yes.
Is this anything to do with the general election coming up soon, do you think?
Oh, well, of course. And you know, the other thing that it's doing is, I mean, David Cameron said categorically that if he gets back into power, he wants to repeal the Human Rights Act. And right now, you know, it's the Human Rights Act, particularly Article 10 and 11, the fundamental right to assembly and the fundamental right to peaceful protest, that is enabling us to do what we've done, you know, in terms of trying to shut down the the unconventional gas industry. And the right-wing press always precede any observation about the Human Rights Act by calling it the hated Human Rights Act. The only people who hate the Human Rights Act are the government and the corporations.
Which is what they use, like people like Avalons and Qatar for.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, I understand that.
Exactly.
So for the general election that's coming up, David Cameron, we just said that, he also said that if he didn't stick to his promises, voting out, that was 5 years ago. And he's talking about not doing the next term, the third term, right?
Yeah.
But he's not ruled out the next term.
Yeah.
Even though all his promises he broke.
Pretty much.
So how people are going to kick him out, I'm not too sure. I know that's going to materialise, which is what it's all about, I suppose. But other than that, I think that's my questions here. Thank you very much for your time, and hope you keep doing what you're doing. And is there any more events in the future that you've got planned? Or
well, we've got an AV6 coming up in Daventry in the middle of May. And then basically I want to see what happens at the election, and then you know, decide where I go from there.
Otherwise, good thinking. Right, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks a lot.